Okay, I hope that everyone's getting logged in okay. Greetings. Welcome to the June SILA Foundation webinar, Recruiting and Retention Strategies for the Evolving Talent Landscape. I'm Cindy Davidson, the Education Trustee for SILA Foundation. Today we are delighted to be hearing from Tony Cañas. Tony is an insurance nerd, blogger, and speaker. He has over 10 years experience with multiple carriers spanning claims, underwriting, finance, and sales. Currently, Tony serves as client advisor with the Jacobson Group, which provides property and casualty organizations with temporary staffing and subject matter experts. Tony's also the co-founder and chief motivational officer at Insurance Nerds, which is actually where we tracked him down, a fun and informative website devoted to providing talent development and career management advice. Tony hosts a webcast/podcast called Profiles in Risk. They're on like their 200th episode. Well worth checking out at insnerds.com. My favorite episode was the Imagining the Economy We Could Build Post-Coronavirus. Also, Tony is co-author of the best-selling book, Insuring Tomorrow, Engaging Millennials in the Insurance Industry, and that's kind of why he's here. He's passionate about insurance, technology, innovation, and has been super involved in the industry's efforts to recruit and retain millennials. He helps our industry understand how to engage this large demographic that will soon make up over 50% of our workforce. These days, organizations like ours are navigating evolving candidate needs, an aging workforce, modernization efforts, all while adapting to the impact of a global pandemic. Easy, right? In order to most effectively attract top talent, insurance really have to rethink their recruiting and retention strategies. So today, Tony's going to give us an overview of the current insurance talent landscape and its many disruptors. We're going to learn how to reach qualified candidates, develop job postings that appeal to all generations, and focus on emerging talent. Additionally, he's going to discuss best practices for interviewing, hiring, and onboarding remotely, along with how to develop a culture that engages and retains employees for years to come. I should also mention that Tony is available for 1-hour micro mentoring sessions for career advancement in case you're interested or know anyone who is. We have an hour, and although you're all on mute, we will take questions through the Q&A function, and Tony will address them at the end. Let us know in the chat if you're having any technical issues, and we'll try to help you out. And by we, I mean our excellent SILA webinar managers, not me. I'm going to turn this session over to Tony, and I'll be back at the end to wrap us up.
Okay, well, hello everyone. I'll be honest, this one's a little bit of a weird one for me, and I'm playing with the software a little bit, so I think right now you can only see me. We'll go back to the slide deck here in a little bit. It's a little bit of a weird one. I've spoken at many insurance events, something like 50 or 60 insurance events in the last 5 or 6 years, and it's one of my favorite things to do. But usually I'm in person, and usually I'm dressed in a Superman shirt and a red jacket and running around stage. So it's hard for me to be sitting here and not have the usual feedback I get from the audience. But thank you for joining us. As you all know, we're in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic, and you can see it's showing in my hair that this is 13 weeks of quarantining. I did shave in the last week because you wouldn't be able to see me otherwise. But I'm very excited to be here. I must say I have never been giving such a thorough introduction. So SILA definitely did their research on me. Usually I spend a couple minutes at the beginning introducing myself, but in this case they really hit everything. Ultimately, what I am is a passionate insurance nerd. I've been in the industry for 10 years, worked in just about every side of the industry except for maybe the actuarial side, and really fell in love with it. And it broke my heart when I realized early on that a lot of people in my generation were not excited about insurance, and they fell into it by accident, and then a lot of them wouldn't stay. And that's when I started Insurance Nerds and became very involved with the efforts to help people get excited about insurance and especially succeed once they're here. And that led me to write the book, which is called Insuring Tomorrow, Engaging Millennials in the Insurance Industry, and that led me to my dream job at Jacobson, where I can help the industry with its staffing and talent needs. So, like the introduction said, questions, please put them in the Q&A section, which I think is on the right of your screen, and at the end we'll try to answer as many as we can. Okay. So basically, today what we're talking about is an overview of the different trends that we're seeing out there in the insurance staffing world today. And what I love about my job with Jacobson is that since we are the largest executive search and staffing firm serving the insurance industry, and we do life, health, and P&C at all levels, from the C-level to the entry level, both permanent and remote, I get to see kind of a 40,000-foot overview of what's going on in the industry when it comes to staffing. So I'm able to speak more broadly rather than just from one specific company. And for the last several years that I've been presenting, a big part of what I've been talking about is how low unemployment is within the insurance industry. I'm so used to saying 1.5%, 2% unemployment within insurance. Well, this is the first time I'm presenting in a significantly different world. Basically, in April, I'm sure you all know the overall economy experienced the most drastic month-to-month unemployment increase in the 72-year history of the Bureau of Labor Statistics measuring unemployment. And unemployment rose to 14.7% in general economy. This is after several years of being around the 6.54%. And I spent the last 10 years talking about how insurance is an amazing career because it is such a stable career, and how during the 2009 crisis it remains such a stable career, and large or mass downsizings were uncommon in our industry compared to just about every other industry. And the good news is that insurance hasn't let me down, and it continues to be an incredibly stable career. In fact, while the national unemployment increased to 14.7%, insurance unemployment only increased from about 1% to 3.9%. So 3.9% is a lot higher than we've seen within insurance in a long time, but it is still incredible compared to the rest of the economy. So we continue to be an incredibly stable place to work at, and what that means is we continue to be in an employee's market. Whenever you hire, you're dealing with a market where the employee has a lot of choice and a lot of power, and where they end up going, and they continue to be under high demand. The insurance experience continues to be very, very valuable. I'm just trying to check the notes here to see if there's anything important that I should say on this slide. Okay, perfect. Okay, so Jacobson and the Ward Group, which is part of Aon, do a survey twice a year, usually in January and in July. And in the survey, we ask insurance carriers and other insurance organizations about their hiring plans for the rest of the year. When coronavirus hit, we did an interim talent survey to get a feel for the market. And basically what we found is significant shifting of hiring plans for the rest of the year. 43% of insurance companies answered that their hiring plans have changed due to COVID-19. The last big survey, the January survey, we had found that there had been an interesting change where for several years, IT talent was the most difficult to recruit within insurance. That had shifted when we did the January survey. It had shifted to actuarial talent being the hardest one to find, and all of the core areas of insurance, claims, underwriting, etc., all remain difficult to find. But basically, in the last survey, we found in the COVID survey in March, we found that 43% of insurance companies changed hiring plans. 33%, so a third, did not make any changes. 23% were still evaluating, and 18% were on an active hiring freeze. So that hiring freeze is interesting. Many carriers on a hiring freeze when it comes to permanent talent. However, projects still have to get done. So many carriers seem more willing to look at temporary talent for needs that can't be delayed, rather than permanent talent. Even before the coronavirus crisis, we were already in a highly disruptive environment, and now we've added COVID to that list. But if you look at that list of disruptors that are and have been affecting our industry, it is truly an industry in flux. And I spent a lot of time chatting with insurance leaders who have been in the industry for a long time, and what I keep hearing over and over and over is that they've seen more change in the last 5 years than they ever had prior in their careers, and that they expect that the next five years will be even more radical, right? So we've got things like the gig economy with 13% of insurers during our last survey said that they expect to use more temporary talent in the next 12 months, and that's a whole different skill set. It's something that we're very much not used to within insurance. Outside of claims and maybe the actuarial space, we're not used to using temporary talent, so it's something that we have to get better at. A survey by Accenture at the end of last year of business and IT executives. This was not within the insurance industry specifically, but it found that 96% of insurance, 96% of business and IT executives expect that the rate of change will continue to accelerate. And a lot of that is being caused by AI. And if you look at the insurtech movement that has hit us like a huge wave, where there's 1,500, 1,700 different insurtech companies that have been founded in the last five years, many of them are focused in that space of AI. One of the very interesting things that we have found during the last survey and during the conversations that we've been having with hiring managers and insurance executives is a shifting of business priorities during this time. Here at the top of the list, home shoring. We hadn't even heard it mentioned in the last several years. So basically, for a long time, we have seen a move towards offshoring certain things like processing. Many carriers, we've seen this even more on the life insurance space. Many carriers had offshored a lot of processing to India, to the Philippines, to lower cost of living countries like that. And as the world shut down for COVID, what they found is that they lost some of those capabilities because of those countries being less prepared for remote work than we were, having less reliable internet, populations that don't have computer and internet access at home. So it's helping carriers realize the value of keeping at least some of those capabilities at home. Also, flexibility when it comes to staffing has become ever more important as the states reopen in different rates and different cities reopen in different rates. We have to figure out how to best keep those employees productive and engaged, even when some of them are in the office, when many of them are not in the office. As we're having a lot of conversations on how to do that, and a lot of it comes down to being flexible. And personally, and this is Tony speaking, not Jake speaking, but personally, I believe that this is going to catapult us 5 years into the future when it comes to remote work, and this is corroborated by a lot of the conversations that I've been having with our clients, which are hiring managers or insurance companies, have been. It used to be that when they would call for a need, in many cases, they wouldn't be open to remote talent, or especially if they were looking at hiring the person permanently after the remote period. And that just went out the window as the carriers were forced to go remote overnight and realized that people are just as productive remotely. So personally, I think that it's going to be very hard to put this genie back in the bottle, so to speak. And I think that we're going to have to get much better at being flexible with our talent, especially when it comes to where to allow them to work. Also, what happens when schools go back in the fall? What happens if we have to shut back down? What happens if we see a further pandemic next year or at some point in the future? How prepared are we to give the staff the flexibility that they need in order to be productive? How well would your people do, for example, homeschooling again in the fall if schools remain closed or have to close for a period of time, right? Those are things that we need to think about. And at the same time, the insurtech movement continues to push us forward to innovate. And AM Best is measuring innovation as part of the way that they rate carriers, which is the ever important rating. And another really interesting piece that we're seeing is carriers becoming more open-minded to crowdsourcing things. This is something we had not seen in the past, but we're having more and more conversations where they're asking us for help on how to manage crowdsourcing efforts. So it's very interesting that the effect that this situation has had on our talent market. Okay, so I think remote work is a huge piece of what's going on. Where did this number come from exactly? Okay, so this particular number came from the Global Workplace Analytics survey, which was done in March, between March and April of this year. But I think it's a really mind-blowing number. 77% of the workforce wants to continue to work from home at least part of the time. That's a 132% increase from that same survey the last time it was done before the pandemic. So basically, a lot of people have realized the massive advantages that they can gain from working remotely. And what I hear over and over from the hiring managers, the business leaders that I'm talking to at the insurance carriers, is that they have not seen a loss of productivity. And if you think about it, it makes a ton of sense. In insurance, we don't make widgets, right? So 90+% of insurance jobs could, with the right tools and the right culture, could be done from home, because we're not building anything, right? It's all about the right collaboration. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no value to that in-person to that in-person collaboration. In fact, I've been a remote employee for Jacobson for the last 2 years, and up until the pandemic hit, I was still flying into Chicago once a month to build those internal relationships. I also think that there's a great benefit of spending some time in person at the beginning when the person gets hired. That's what Jacobson did with me, and it worked really, really, really well. But there's benefits on both sides. By that employee not having a commute, that saves time. And depending on what part of the country you're in, most of my clients are in the Northeast. That's what my territory is for Jacobson. So many of them have 1.5-hour, 2-hour commutes. That is saved time that basically you can split with the employee. All of a sudden, you end up with an employee that's not only much more engaged, much less stressed, much less tired, but also working more hours. So it's really a win-win. That same survey, the Global Workplace Analytics survey, found that a typical employer can save $11,000 per year per person who works remotely full time. So there is a ton of savings. Now, those savings don't come right away, right? As it takes a while to flex leases and redo buildings, and most of us still have leases for our office that go several years into the future, but that's a significant savings. And major companies like Facebook, Twitter, Google, etc., have announced, and it's actually not on the slide, but super interesting, nationwide, in Columbus, Ohio, became the first carrier to make a major public move towards remote work. They're getting rid of all of their offices that are outside of their 4 core offices, and in the rest, they're really liberalizing their work from home rules. So this is not only in the technology world. We are seeing this in our insurance industry for sure. And like I said earlier, I personally think that's going to be very hard to put the genie back in the bottle. I think that this will have a huge effect, especially for rural carriers who before had to relocate people into areas that had better cost of living, but were less popular places to live in. Now, if we move towards more of a national market for talent, imagine, right, if you're at a carrier like Westfield Insurance or like Society Insurance in Wisconsin or the many carriers that are in a little bit rural areas, not destination cities, imagine what this can do, right? If you're not in Hartford or New York or Chicago, imagine what this can do to open up your access to talent. Okay, so the demographics of the industry are my favorite topic. Like I said earlier, it's what brought me into Jacobson and what got me to write my book. I've been talking about this for several years. So we continue to have an aging workforce within insurance. In fact, at this point, nearly 6% of the insurance industry is 65 or older. Like, think about that. 6% of the industry is at the point where they've reached traditional retirement age, right? So that is a huge risk that pretty much every carrier, pretty much every broker, pretty much every insurance organization has to deal with. And I have many conversations with business unit leaders in the industry where half their staff is about ready to retire. In fact, and part of it is just the baby boomer generation was a very large generation with 80 million people. They were followed by the Gen Xers, which were only 60 million, 25% less, followed by millennials like myself, who are again 80 million, 82 million, followed by Gen Zers. We'll see where they end up in number. Don't know yet where the cutoff will be basically for the end of Gen Z. So the overall economy is seeing boomers retire at 10,000 a day, and again they're followed by the Gen X generation, which is a lot smaller. Within insurance, the number of insurance professionals aged 55 and older is nearly 30% higher than the rest of the economy. That number blows my mind that there is that much of a difference. So we are quite simply an older industry, and there's great reasons for that. Part of the reason for that is we're such a fantastic industry to work in, and we're such a stable industry as we are showing right now during this crisis. But that does mean that we have to get better at engaging and retaining our younger talents. We also have to get better at engaging and retaining diverse talent, because those younger generations are significantly more diverse. The median age for insurance professionals right now is, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is 45, which is 3 years older than for all occupations. And we've got 170,000 insurance professionals aged 65 and older. Okay. Perfect. So it is essential for hiring managers and recruiters to adjust in order to successfully move forward in this unprecedented time. Well, many of the core elements of the hiring process remain the same. However, it's important to translate those interactions to the virtual world, right? We're used to taking things like their in-person presentation, taking things like their ability to come across well in person, to shake my hand properly. We're used to using those things as data points during in the later stages of the hiring process. That's gotten a lot harder right now, right? And especially, how do we make sure for our higher level hires, our executive level hires, how do we make sure that they'll come across correctly when they have to be in person if we can't meet them in person for now? Okay. Authenticity is absolutely crucial, and I'm a big believer that authenticity will come through in webinar format if you kind of button down the tie a little bit and let yourself be authentic. Start every conversation with an authentic banter, an authentic attempt to connect with the person, maybe even a little more than normally than normal, because you lose, even with a webcam, you lose some of the body language. So you need to make an effort to spend a little more time on building that connection up front before getting that down to business. Okay. Also, we have to recognize that work and life balance are more blended than ever before. I can't tell you. I don't have kids myself, but I can't tell you how many kids I've had running in the background of different meetings that I've had with other people who have kids. Be understanding. Right now, it's the reality that we're all dealing with. Use it as a point to connect. Many insurance companies are very proud of being very family-oriented companies. Great time to show that. That also means that we have to call our own leaders out when they don't behave in the ways that match company values. We can't be afraid to do that. Here's some data that we have found. Half of candidates say that they would not work for a company with a bad reputation, even for a pay increase. I think this applies even more within insurance, given how in demand experienced insurance talent is. Make no mistake, they will research you on Glassdoor. They will go on LinkedIn and look for friends that work for your company to ask for the real story. So company culture truly does matter, and it's very hard to recruit if you don't have the right culture. 90% of candidates would apply for a job at a company that actively maintains their employee brand. A perfect example of this within our industry is USAA. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten career advice calls from people who are dying to get into USAA. Why? Because they've spent a lot of time figuring out their employer brand and getting that brand out there, and their employees are true ambassadors for them. They're not one of my clients, so I haven't worked with them, but that is definitely the reputation they have in the market. That reputation helps them a ton when it comes to recruiting. Also, 92% of people would consider changing jobs if it meant going to a company with an excellent reputation. Okay. So how do we broaden the funnel? We have to be open to candidates who don't fulfill the exact list of experience. Look for transferable skills and attributes and connect across geography. This is something that at Jacobson we spend a lot of time doing for our clients, helping them understand that within the insurance market, even right now, as with employment having increased a little bit, there are no purple squirrels. You are very unlikely within our very hot insurance employment market to find the exact set of experience that you're looking for. And also the exact set of experience that you're looking for in our industry is likely to come in a package that looks a lot like your existing leadership. It's likely to lack some diversity. So we really encourage our clients, we really help them to be open. We help them figure out which skills would transfer well, rather than just help them find people that have an exact match to the perfect candidate, purple squirrel that they had in their head. Also, this is a fantastic time. I was talking about it a little bit earlier. This is a fantastic time to think about how you can look at different geographies, right? So if you're one of the many carriers in a rural area where it's hard to convince people to relocate to your area, now's the time. The computer is warning me that the connection was a little weak, so hopefully you can still hear me and I'm not just talking to myself. Okay. So this is the perfect time to look beyond the geographies that you would normally recruited from, since we're all playing on a level geography-less playing field, basically. Okay. So how can we ask ourselves which attributes and skills would fit rather than specific experience? How can we take a strategic approach to finding those? And how can we take advantage of this time in order to broaden our geography? Okay. Job postings are an interesting thing in our industry. Okay. First, determine which requirements are truly essential. Again, try to forget about that purple squirrel, that perfect candidate, but rather focus on which requirements would be truly essential for the role. Focus on skills rather than experience. If you look at most job postings in our industry, they're usually written by job experience. Also, let's make sure to use gender-neutral language, tell a compelling story, and update those posts regularly. One thing I see at many carriers is canned job postings written by HR that the hiring manager didn't get much of a chance to edit, and they don't read very, very well. They don't read very authentic, right? Earlier we were talking about authenticity, and when it comes to younger talent, which is right where I come from, if you're trying to attract entry-level talent and you're using a ton of insurance language and you're not explaining it's hard to understand. If you haven't worked in insurance before, or if you haven't worked in a specific department, it's hard to understand. You know how much insurance-specific language we use. There is a great tool on my website, Insurance Nerds, at insnerds.com. If you click on resources and click on the world's simplest insurance glossary, there's about 100 and some insurance terms translated into simple English. The 1,000 most common words in the language. It might be a helpful resource to help you better write your job descriptions. Okay. What about the candidate experience? So candidate experience is huge. It's where we lose a lot of talent. There are many times where we find what we believe is the perfect person, and then a month and a half of decision by committee ends up damaging the relationship with this potential employee. And again, we live in a hot employment market where talent is being fought over. It's a true war for talent. Even with the increase in employment we have right now within our industry, is definitely a war for talent. So the candidate experience is absolutely huge. So you really have to look at how the candidates will evaluate your business. Emphasize company values and how they're reflected throughout the organization. Whenever possible, use examples. Don't just tell me that your organization stands for commitment to the communities where you work. Show me examples of how that is actually executed, and also the candidate needs to understand not only the company, also the team and the position, and how it fits in the overall. According to a Career Builder survey, 78% of candidates said that the candidate experience is a reflection of how much a company values its people. So think about it. You value your people, value your candidates too. Also, you don't want them bad-mouthing you for a bad candidate experience. We are unfortunately infamous for ghosting candidates. That it's not a good look. Also, if at all possible, not only get back to them in a timely manner and provide ongoing, clear, and consistent communication, but also we highly recommend to our clients giving feedback to all candidates, even those that did not get the job, because you never know how your impression that you're leaving on that candidate is going to play out in the future. It's a great opportunity to have them come back later for a role that they're better match for, or after they get the experience that you wanted them to have. Okay. So D&I, diversity and inclusion, is a big deal in our country right now, and for our industry, it truly is a gigantic deal. But how do we actually improve the diversity of our hiring? Well, one way to do that is by utilizing blind or team interviews when possible. Also, we encourage you to conduct regular pay equity analysis and base pay on position, not on people. The last thing we want is to end up on the bad end of getting called out for pay inequality. Highly recommend checking out, once the world goes back to normal, checking out some of the great insurance D&I conferences out there. I went to one in Chicago last year that was absolutely fantastic. Also, check out the work of Lead at Any Level, Amy Weininger. She's a former Liberty Mutual leader who moved on to start her own consulting company, blog and podcast, etc., about D&I, and she comes from insurance, so she really gets our world. I spend most of my life talking about millennials, but the kids graduating from college right now are Gen Zers, and every time they're surveyed, Gen Zers across all industries say that they would be reluctant to accept a job offer from an employer that was not as diverse as the communities that they serve, and that is a constant problem that we have within our industry, especially within the leadership. Okay, so we're talking about blind and team interviews when possible. Part of that is training our hiring managers to look for critical skills and attributes, and also understand where those skills can be gained on the job. Okay, so chances are good that in the last couple months you have been thrown headfirst into a world where you have to do virtual interviews where maybe you didn't do them before, or at least you didn't do the last one virtually before. So as I was saying earlier, a big part of it is trying to build a connection with the candidate first. Take a little time to really build that rapport. Remember that even with video, some of the body language gets lost. So it takes a little longer to make the connection. Share guidelines with every hiring manager, not just HR. Convey a consistent employer brand, set expectations, and get creative. Okay. Is there a way that you could provide virtual office tours, especially for employees that will be in the office after we're all back to the office? If you're hiring them in a virtual setting right now, there a way that we could give them a virtual tour of the office? Is there a way that we can allow them to do a virtual sit-in with a member of the team that they'll be working with? Is there a way that we can have them interview with multiple members of the team they're interviewing for, as opposed to just with the hiring manager? Okay, how are we doing on time? We got about 5 minutes left to get to the slides. Okay. Okay, so best practices for virtual hiring. We have to find ways to translate the personal touch points to the virtual world, and if applicable, be flexible with relocation packages and timing. Understand that people are scared of moving right now, and we have to really instill a sense of confidence in the new person for the company that they're going to. That's harder to do if we don't have the chance to meet them in person. Okay, there are some recruiting mistakes that we've seen, and we encourage you to think about and avoid. First of all, remember that we are in a really competitive market in the insurance industry right now. There's a lot of processes that take way too long, and that is where we tend to lose talent, is those month and a half long interview processes. Remember, once somebody becomes open to even if they were a passive candidate before, once we get them thinking about changing companies, all of a sudden they're likely to be much more amenable to any calls that they get from recruiters, and they're likely to move quickly. Be careful when it comes to letting them be exposed to employees who are negative about the company. It's a little bit harder to monitor now in a virtual setting. Careful with misuse or overuse of psychometric tests. Psychometric tests for some roles make a lot of sense, but they're only a data point. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that they're a green or red light. They're just one of the data points. So you have to be careful with that, and don't focus overly narrowly on specific experience or geographic restrictions. After all, right now we're all remote, so this is the time to figure out how to be remote and how to hire remote. How to onboard when it comes to virtual onboarding. We recently, check out jacobsononline.com. We recently published on the blog a guide on how to do this, but I'll summarize it real quick. You have to have a clear strategy, proactively make introductions not only to the team that they'll be working with, but also to the other teams that they're likely to need to interact with. Double check the technology and touch base more frequently than you would otherwise. So normally, if you would be touching base with a new employee at the end of their second week as the HR rep, touch base at the end of the first week, touch base twice a week until they get fully settled. You don't want them to feel like an island, which is very easy if you're starting virtually and you weren't a part of the organization before. And think long term. New hires are receiving a vast amount of information at once, so consider adding layers of training, refreshers to that training. It's hard to retain that information for a long period of time that you get at the very beginning, especially when you get it all virtually like we are right now. Okay, some retention strategies for the workforce that we have today and the workforce that we'll have into the future. Really put yourself in their shoes and think about what they would see on their first day. In my normal presentation, I spent a lot of time talking about the first day. The first day is our chance to make an impression. At many carriers, that first day is a lot of HR paperwork and very little and very little looking into the culture, very little really seeing the company, very little feeling welcome. Restructure your first day to be as engaging as possible. What do you want them to see on the first day? And how do we need to structure accordingly? Okay. How do we develop a motivating environment? Creating leadership opportunities, especially when it comes to your younger employees. My hair's driving me crazy, clearly. Especially when it comes to your younger employees. We are a generation that realizes that we have to do not only a good job today, but keep ourselves employable for the next one, in case you don't need us next year, in case things radically change next year. So we want leadership experience. So anything you can do to allow us to get leadership experience, whether it is in informal groups, whether it is in employee resource groups, whether it is in special projects, and whatever it is, also empower teams and address their concerns, and acknowledge that the change is difficult. There are many models for managing change out there. I'm a big fan of ADKAR, but make sure that you're using some sort of change management model for any big changes that are affecting your employees. How do we advance inclusion? Well, we have to embrace the differences in employee experiences from where they come from and their values across the organization, and support honest conversations and encourage feedback. That honest conversations part is the hardest in my opinion, especially in our industry where we tend to be overly polite. There's a lot of training out there. I very much enjoy crucial conversations training, but there's a lot of training out there that can help us and our managers provide better feedback. And again, on the generational piece, for millennials, feedback is absolutely everything, and honest feedback. Don't fall for the myth that we just need that we can only get good feedback. Honest feedback is what matters. Okay, how do we cultivate a remote culture? Communicate with transparency and clarity. Use as much video as possible. At Jacobson right now, every phone call with my boss is a video call. That is our default, and we have found that is same thing for team meetings. We have found that is the great way to engage while we can't we can't see each other on a day-to-day basis. How do we engage our young professionals? Give the employees the ability to make a positive impact as quickly as possible. Provide constant and honest feedback. Create a clear and objective evaluation system. My presentation on millennials specifically is you can easily find it on YouTube or Vimeo. If you can't find it, send me an email. I'll have my email here in the last slide. I'm more than happy to help with this, and my book has a ton of things that you can do to engage your younger professionals also. Providing advancement opportunities is absolutely huge. Mentorship programs are the thing that most of the top 25 companies that millennials want to work for have in common. Job shadowing programs. In our new virtual world, think about ways in which we could create programs like that for people to job shadow even while we're not in the office. Any special projects and coaching. Also, I think it's very important to remember that your employer brand is not, in today's world, is not just what you put on the website. It is very much what your people say in social media, in person, to their friends, to their connections, about what it's like to work in your company. How can we help people at all levels of the company? How can we encourage them? How can we give them permission to be loud, to be verbal in all their channels, to be honest in all the channels about what it's like to work in your company? If you've invested a lot in making it a great place to work at, let your people get the word out. Let me tell you my experience that shaky YouTube videos without censorship are a lot more believable to millennials and Gen Zers than expensive, professionally created videos. So that's it when it comes to the actual content we have for today. Here you have my contact info and all the different websites. And by the way, I just noticed there's it's the email is tcañas@jacobsononline.com, not .co. So sorry about that. Okay, so we have about 9 minutes left for questions. So do go ahead and send in your questions through the Q&A section. The first question I have, and I don't know if I'm allowed to read the name, so I won't read the name, but thank you for the question. The first question I see is, surprised that we have a reputation for ghosting applicants. What can we do to improve or correct that impression? Okay. That impression, in my opinion, comes largely because of the length of time that a lot of our hiring processes take. I have personally received a thank you for applying email a year and a half after having applied for a job at a carrier. And I've heard from many people that it's taken them months to hear back on applications. That is the big thing that we need to correct, is the length of time that it takes to get back to them. Got another comment here. Absolutely love this presentation and this new video app. Thank you so much for information. I'm actually calling out my name because you're being so nice. Thank you, Brittany Hannah, for that comment. And also earlier you posted about how you could hear me when my computer was telling me that the internet was a little questionable. So thank you so much for that. It was very helpful in getting me back on track. And if you like this one, I highly encourage you to check out my usual presentation on millennials, which is on YouTube, because it is a lot of fun. It's just harder to do in a webinar format without the crowd. But check it out because it is a very fun one. Okay.
All right.
My eyes for any other questions or comments.
Yeah, I think I'll wrap us up, and if anybody still has questions, they can keep putting them into the Q&A. Thank you so much, Tony. That was outstanding. I think a lot of us who've been in the industry for years and years and years and years are very much, and now find ourselves managing millennials in our team. I just found this so helpful. I think I already knew that feedback was key, but it's good to have that reinforced. My team, we are on IM all day long. It never stops. We are in constant conversations, and we also do the Zoom thing. I was, as a work from home person, for forever. I've been kind of an OG for working remotely. I've been against having the camera on in my home just because I'm like, yeah, this is my house. A cat could walk across my keyboard.
Because your hair might look like this?
Yeah, my hair does look like that, which is why I'm not on camera today. But I'm having a dirty hippie day, so that's why I told Mary Ellen I'm not going to be on camera today. But I had that policy prior to everybody working from home, but since the pandemic and everybody going home, I had to change my policies, and I've had to kind of rethink, I guess it's okay for us all to be peering into each other's living rooms and kitchens and, things that I wasn't totally comfortable with before.
I think that there's definitely it is definitely important to keep in mind your people's personalities, right? And I'm a big fan of the disc profile for that. But it definitely keep in mind some of your people are introverts and they won't want to be on camera every day, and that's okay. And that's okay. But having a few times a week where that check-in and those team meetings are on camera I think it does go a long way. Also, we do have a question, and Randy took the time to post it both in the chat and in the QA section, basically asking of the younger entrants into the insurance industry, why are they choosing the insurance industry? And I really want to answer that one, because they're not choosing the insurance industry. They're falling into it by accident. The tried and true way. Very few of them, 10 to 15% of new hires in any given year, come from risk management programs. And in that case, somebody at Gamma Delta Sigma, somebody at that risk management program, somebody in that local area volunteered to speak to students in that school and convince a few of them to check out the risk management and insurance programs. But for the rest of us that came without risk management degrees, we fell into it by accident. I guarantee you that your younger hires, for an entry-level job, they did not come in because they wanted to work in insurance. They came in because it was a job. And it is our job to, over their first couple of years, help them understand what an amazing industry this is. And that's what we've been doing at Insurance Nerds for this whole time, is provide a lot of content to help you do that. Help them understand what an amazing industry this is. And if we help them understand what amazing industries is, how to grow within the industry, how they're doing good for the world while making a good living, then we have a great chance of keeping them for the future. So thank you, Randy, for that question. I hope that kind of answered it.
That is such a great question. And Tony, I think we could have a whole other session on why people get into the industry. I think accidentally is going to be the answer, no matter what your age is, honestly. There's not a lot of people who say, gee, when I grow up, I really want to go work in financial services and work for an insurance company. But that would be a great topic for, I think, a future session. And I've also wondered about where does the leadership come from in our industry, because we also see a lot of our carriers recruiting the C-level from outside of the industry instead of internally, and I think that's a problem. So I don't know what you think about that.
That varies a lot. I have asked the question to live audiences. Raise your hand if you grew up wanting to work in insurance, and usually it's nobody. And if there's one person raising their hand, then my next question to that person is, was your dad an agent? And 90% of the time the answer is yes. But yeah, so that is the tried and true way. People still fall into insurance by accident. That's how most of us got here. So as you get back to work on Monday, and as we get back into the office sometime later this year or next year, I encourage everybody, find a young kid in an entry-level job who might not have an idea on where to go within the industry, and mentor them, get them excited about the industry, tell them about your career, tell them how you did it, give them the tools, point them to Insurance Nerds, whatever we need to do to help them grow and help them stay within the industry.
Love it. And I don't know if you know this, Tony, but SILA Foundation, we do fund scholarships for students every year who are entering our industry. So that's definitely part of our mission and outreach. So I'm going to start closing us up. And if any more questions come in or if people can stay on, that'd be great. But this webinar has been recorded and will be posted to the SILA Foundation YouTube channel in the next couple of weeks. Tony's contact information is available in the webinar invite, so be sure to reach out to him if you have specific or private questions you might have after we close. SILA Foundation provides these webinars free of charge as part of our mission and outreach. If you learned something of value today, please consider a personal or corporate donation to the foundation, since we rely on donations to keep programs like these webinars going, also our scholarships. You'll be receiving a post-webinar survey, so please be sure to fill that out and provide candid feedback that will help us improve. And I'm going to do a commercial for next month, July 16th. We will feature Scott Addis from Beyond Insurance on the fine art of negotiation. So add that to your calendar and plan on joining us then. And thank you again, Tony. You have been given us so many things to think about and improve upon and do better, and that's what it's all about. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me.